opinion columnist David French from the New York Times, and he worked before at Conservative Rags. He got a rude awakening from his evangelical church. They canceled him. Why did they cancel him? Because he had the nerve to speak some truths about Donald Trump. Truths that they all need to hear. But when you are of a belief that somehow your chosen one is somebody as flawed as Donald Trump, and you have to make sure to not say anything to reveal the truth about him, this is what you get. This was a long interview that was done on MSNBC with, but I tell you what, I cut it to get the full essence of it. Check this out, and then we'll take it on the other side. Critique it, because I think they did a great job in giving him the platform to tell a truth that many other media is not given enough of a platform to do so. Check this out. We'll take it on the other side.
And the decision to not support Donald Trump for president that has left some Americans feeling alienated by their churches. New York Times opinion columnist David French has a new piece out entitled "The Day My Old Church Canceled Me Was a Very Sad Day." And in it, he writes this. This week, the leaders of the Presbyterian Church in America will gather in Richmond, Virginia for their annual General Assembly. The Presbyterian Church in America is a small, theologically conservative Christian denomination that was my family's church home for more than 15 years. It just canceled me. I am now deemed too divisive to speak to a gathering of Christians who share my faith. Two things happened that changed our lives, however, and in hindsight, they're related. First, in 2010, we adopted a 2-year-old girl from Ethiopia. Second, in 2015, Donald Trump announced his presidential campaign. I was a senior writer for National Review at the time, and when I wrote pieces critical of Trump, members of the alt-right pounced, and they attacked us through our daughter. We turned to our church for support and comfort. Our pastors and close friends came to our aid, but support was hardly universal. The church as a whole did not respond the way it did when I deployed. Instead, we began encountering racism and hatred up close from people in our church and in our church school. And David French joins us now. David, your church, what are the values it's based on? Can we refresh our memory?
Yeah. I tell you what, I've never seen anything like it. I've seen political divisions in church where, there are Republicans and Democrats, and I had spent, much of my life worshiping alongside Democrats. And when I came out against Donald Trump all the way back in 2015, I knew there would be some disagreement. I did not expect anything like we encountered. Now, look, our pastors, our close friends, they were not tolerating any of that racism or political intolerance. But it became part of the constant drumbeat of our lives. You could not any longer go to church and assume you weren't going to be confronted by someone angry. And then my daughter encountering and my kids encountering this incredible up close and personal racism at the school attached to our church. It just became incredibly difficult to sustain living in that environment. Again, there were many people who were great, but this combination of the devotion to Trump combined with the unearthing of a lot of the racism that was already in the denomination but had been given new life in this moment made it just unsustainable to stay. And then, we saw the denomination invite me back to speak to share how we responded to some of these really, really polarized moments. And then the far right attacked, and within days I was canceled.
But David, the question that I had when I read your article, do you think it's that there are some that have joined this cult-like following around Donald Trump that religion gets mixed up with what is cult, and that they really don't see the difference. They brought into this cult the feeling that they are righteous and doing what is God's will, when it's in fact a cult that has very little to do with biblical grounding or morality.
Well, there's two things happening at once. On the one hand, you have a bunch of people in the church who literally believe that God chose Trump for this moment to save America. They will say he's God's very unlikely vessel for saving America. So if you're opposing Trump, you're opposing the chosen one. And then the other thing that happens is they exaggerate all of the darkness of the other side. So what they then say is, look, Trump is the chosen one, and then the other side, the Democrats, are just pure evil. And so you even have in many churches a bunch of people who will say you just cannot be Christian and Democratic. You can't be Christian and a Democrat at the same time. It's just not possible. And so that exerts an incredibly powerful pressure on people in the church, because there's Donald Trump, the chosen one, against this other side that's allegedly so bad you can't even be Christian and support it. And so you begin to see the social pressure that is put on people to conform, and why when somebody dissents and they say, no, I don't agree that a three-time married adulterous guy who was just convicted of crimes related to paying hush money to a porn star is God's chosen one to save America. When you don't agree with that, you're actually seen as an enemy of God. You're seen as an enemy of the United States at the same time. And that social pressure is just extraordinary. But what's even sadder is that Trump, who has this giant Christian base, a giant segment of the American church is backing him, and he has no power unless they back him. You know, what's particularly sad is you're talking about how this whole concept of repentance, that is so fundamental to the Christian faith. It's absolutely fundamental.
So fundamental.
But they still think he's the chosen one, even though, let's just go through some of the recent lists from the last year. He's been found responsible for sexual abuse. He's been found liable for defaming a victim of sexual abuse. He's been found responsible for hundreds of millions of dollars worth of fraud. He's been convicted of a crime that, even though I think there are some weaknesses in the legal side of the case, the factual side, the facts, it's overwhelming that he's did what he was accused of doing. And he's unrepentant about all of it. And if anything, the evangelical church is more a pillar of his power now than it was even a few years ago. He won the Republican primary on the strength of overwhelming evangelical support. And this is something, again, the social pressure is huge. He's God's chosen one. He's God's chosen one. It's relentless, this sort of argument. And if you dissent, yeah, there will be people in the church who still love you and support you and respect you, but there will be people who come after you.
So absolutely, yes. David French and his kids and his wife went through hell in the church because, unfortunately, the church did not want to hear the truth. They wanted to put their heads in the sand and believe that Donald Trump was the chosen one, the one God ordained to bring the country forward. Why would God ordain such a character, such an immoral character? Why would God ordain someone that his pew, that children in that church would look at and say, Mom, Dad, I thought you told us that we shouldn't lie. Mom and Dad, I thought you told us that we shouldn't fornicate. Mom and Dad, I thought you told us that we should always be fair with others, treat everyone with respect. Mom and Dad, I thought you told us not to be evil. And everything that these churches preach, Donald Trump is anathema to it. Yet, these are folks that will continue to support him. Leadership is important. Dictatorship is what we have in churches. They call it the pastor, but we all know that the pastor have near omnipotent power with his pew. That's why Donald Trump and many others like to work through the domain of the churches, because the church ain't no democracy. The church is a patriarchal animal that Many times you can tell the pew because just being in the church means that you're willing to subject yourself to a certain form of indoctrination, a certain form of control, and that is used against the pew. Unfortunately, that's what's used against the pew. So here we go. Donald Trump, his biggest support base, the Evangelical Church, and they excommunicate all those that attempt to tell a bit of the truth. And you see all the politicians jumping back to Trump no matter what they've said before. And that is because the church, the omnipotent church, is what is the base, the driving base for Donald Trump, the alt-right and the Evangelical Church. And he thinks he can ride that wave. That is not a winning wave. The Democrats, if they do what's right, if they play their cards right, if they go into every corner of this country, landslide.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number 1, subscribe to our channel. And number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.